Hello everyone, I am Jyoti Business from Kavo. In today's webinar, I will give you an overview of how to easily port applications to different cloud providers or to different cloud regions of the same provider using Kavo inode. Starting version 4.4 of Kavo inode, using Kavo system definition, users can define in detail how their applications should be deployed and managed on various cloud providers or regions. This gives users full control over the behavior of their multi-tier distributed applications on different clouds. This is especially useful in two use cases. First, ISVs looking to make their applications available on all clouds, and second, disaster recovery. In the first use case, ISVs can publish or configure their applications once, and users can run them on any cloud or region without having to worry about the differences among clouds and regions. In the second use case, disaster recovery, users can bring online their applications on an alternate cloud provider using the same system definition. Before showing you how these use cases can be performed, I will give you a brief overview of different inode functionalities that enable them. An entire system in inode consists of a number of server roles under different tiers. Usually, every role is assigned exactly one provider. But starting with this release, it is possible to have multiple providers in a role. However, at any point of time, only one provider can be active. What I will show next is how we can edit provider assignment to a role, that is, switch, add, and remove providers in a role. So let me log into my inode account. This new feature is available on both the design and manage page. Let me go to the design page first. I have to bring up the configuration page where the UI for the new feature is available. And for that, I am using the wizard for creating a new system. Let me give the system an arbitrary name like ABC and click next. This brings up the system configuration wizard. To access the feature I am talking about, I have to click on the edit provider icon here. The top icon, switch provider, switches to a different provider defined in the selected server role. In other words, it makes an inactive provider active. This role has only one provider defined, so there is no provider to switch to. So if I click on it, it will give me an error message. However, using the second item, add provider, we can add new providers to the role. Let me just try that. I have to choose from this list which particular provider I want to add. Let me choose Rackspace, which is the default, and click Add. This adds Rackspace to the server role and also makes Rackspace the active provider for the role. This three-letter text indicates the currently active provider. Now, as the role also has EC2 in it, we can now switch to it. I will bring up the edit options again and then click switch provider. This time, instead of giving me an error, it is allowing me to switch to Amazon, which is the only alternate provider for the role. I will click switch to actually switch to EC2. Now if I want, I can also remove a provider as there are two of them. I bring up the options again and choose remove provider. This list is showing all the inactive providers. Only inactive providers can be removed. I will not actually remove it. I will go back to the configuration page by clicking this link here. By the way, the top link goes back to the options page. Now let me go to the manage page. In the manage page, where we see only configured systems, only switch provider feature is available, and it allows to switch to only configured systems. Configured providers. This system has EC2 as an active provider for all roles and Rackspace as an inactive provider. Both EC2 and Rackspace are fully configured in the system, so I can switch provider to Rackspace. However, if Rackspace was unconfigured, then the switch would not be allowed. Now I will move to the first use case I mentioned, which was ISVs being able to make their applications available on multiple clouds and regions. Let's discuss how that works. I have created a multi-cloud template that runs the PHP Colab application on both EC2 and Rackspace. And this is the template here. It also runs EC2 in two regions. This is sufficient for demonstration purposes, but it is possible to extend this template to include other providers such as IBM and also other EC2 regions or IBM locations. This template is available in the iMod catalog, but it is not public yet. I will make the template public after the webinar. I will first show how a user can use such template. To use a template, user has to configure it and then deploy it. So let me configure the template first. There are 4 server roles in this template. Each role contains EC2 and Rackspace path. In each role, exactly one of the providers is active. In this template, EC2 is active. If I configure the template, now only the EC2 part will get configured. But to configure a multi-cloud template, though it is not mandatory, each part has to be configured to be useful. So I have to configure, say, EC2 first, then switch to Rackspace and configure it. Let me configure the EC2 part first by following these blue prompts. This template has been tested for 2 EC2 regions, namely US East 1 and US West 1. And it remembers the image ID those regions were tested with. US West 1 is the currently chosen region. If I want to switch to US East 1, iMod will automatically pick the image ID tested for that region. I will demonstrate this feature later. So for now, let me click on this link to start the configuration. Then select an EC2 account. Select the key pair. Select the group. And select apply this configuration to all servers in the system down here and click configure. This configures EC2 for all roles in the template. Now I will configure Rackspace by first switching all the server roles to Rackspace. So edit provider, switch provider, Rackspace, switch. The second one, edit provider, switch provider, Rackspace, switch, and so on and so forth. Now all roles have been switched to Rackspace. In a future release of iMode, we will allow users to switch all roles together by a single click in cases where it is meaningful, of course. Now I will click this blue link to start the Rackspace configuration. Select an account. Also select apply this configuration to all servers in the system and then click configure. This finishes configuration for both EC2 and Rackspace. I will click I will deploy later to view the system in the manage page. Now the template is fully configured to run on both EC2 and Rackspace. Rackspace is currently the active provider. If I deploy the system as it is, the deployment will be in Rackspace. If I want to deploy it in EC2, I have to switch the system to EC2. I will do that by switching all the roles in it to EC2. First one, second one, now the system is ready to deploy in EC2 instead of Rackspace. Region-wise, this system has US West 1 as the active region, but it is also designed and tested to run in US East 1. Let me switch the system to US East 1 region. To do that, I have to bring up the edit configuration window and go to the regions tab. and switch the region to US East 1. And then reconfigure. Let me double check this one. Also this one. So I have to switch this. Now all the regions I switch to US East 1. Now let me deploy the system by clicking on the start button here. The system is deploying in EC2 US East 1 region. But I could also deploy it in EC2 US West 1 or RACSpace very easily too. It is evident that the second use case, disaster recovery, can easily be performed by switching to an alternate cloud or region using the same method described here. This is how a user can use a multi-cloud template. Now I will briefly go over how an ISV can create such a template. For that, I have to use the wizard for creating a system which is on the design page. Let me create a two-tier system. Using this wizard, only one provider can be assigned to a server role. So I will choose EC2 as one of the providers and add RACSpace later from the configuration page by adding a new provider. Now I will add RACSpace as an alternate provider. So each provider add provider, access add. And for the second role, next, I have to configure all the providers and choose appropriate images while doing so. If a provider has multiple regions, we can test one image for each region so that user can use the system in those regions without difficulty. We can configure multiple regions with appropriate images for those regions by configuring the server roles multiple times. To show that, let me first switch to EC2. Then configure for region US East 1 with this image. Then reconfigure for US East 1 and US West 1 for some other image. IMOD is now querying EC2 to fetch a list of available images. Let me take this image and configure. Now I must remember which image was for which region. After completing this step, I have to create necessary actions and events depending on the behavior of the system using these links here. How exactly to do that is out of scope for this webinar, so I will not go into detail. However, I would like to mention two important points here. First one, while creating actions, try to use common server attributes as much as possible while referring to server objects in your actions. That will make it easier for you to share actions among multiple providers. For details, refer to this URL here. Second, while editing standard events, only the ones for the currently active provider gets edited. So currently active provider here is EC2. So if I edit a standard event here, the changes would be reflected in EC2 part of the template, not the access part. For more details on how this new feature works under the cover, refer to this link here. With this, I will move to the Q&A section of the webinar. Attendees, please ask your questions in the questions window. I will wait for a couple of minutes. There's a question. In the manage page, only switch provider option is allowed. How to add a new provider to a system in the manage page? That's a good question. So adding new provider is allowed in the configuration page under the design page. So we have to move the system to there. To do that, export your system by clicking on the export system button in the definition tab. Let me go to the manage page. Definition tab. And here is the export system button. So by clicking here, you will be able to export this system definition to your local hard drive. I have already done so before, so I will not do that again. Then go to the design page. And select this option. Then click on import system. And select the template that you exported to a local hard drive. And it will import your system, why not? And also will bring up this page where from you can access the edit provider feature and add your new provider and also configure it, as I have discussed before in the webinar. So I think that answers that question. I will wait for some more time. Since there's no more questions, so with this I will end the webinar. Thanks everyone for attending this. I hope you found the webinar useful. Thanks again for attending it.